All right, so I'll be explaining how I do my integrals. Let's say I have a big piece of this ball bearing steel, 50-100. I mean, this is enough to give me 3 integrals. So what I need to do is I need to turn this into a more like a square shape or more like a rectangular, okay? So I start by forging this into from this round shape to more like a square shape. So I'm trying to get in this shape. This is more like probably 10 centimeters long and 40 millimeters high, and this one is 1.5 centimeters. I like to go to 2.5 centimeters long, thick, so I have enough material for my bolster. So we're at this stage. The next step, what I do is I start hitting the tip of the square here, so it creates the tip portion of my blade. So when I do my forging, I start hitting on top of here, so it squishes the nose down and it becomes pointy, okay? At that stage, I start to forge the tang portion of the blade. But when I'm forging my tang, I'm not trying to get the final shape. I just want to be able to hold with the tongs, so that's the part of the tang. Once the blade is almost done, then I can lengthen the tang, but I don't want to be having a thin, flimsy tang. So at this stage, I start squishing the bottom, the end portion of the steel to create my tang. So then I can use my tongs that they're designated for using the holding from the end of it, okay? And next heat, what I do is I start from heating from the bottom to lift the bolster up, okay? So once I forge from this side to lift it up, it looks more like this, okay? At this stage, I'll be putting the blade down and I'll be starting to forge from the side, because up to this point, we were hitting from the top or we were hitting from the bottom. Now at this stage, it's time to start forging the bevels and make it look more like a knife. So the first thing I do is I kind of draw a line here, so kind of like a parallel with my bolster. I'll be hitting from here onwards, because if I start hitting over here, that's going to squish my bolster and I'm not going to have an integral bolster. So what I do is, let's say I leave about a 2 centimeter or so here, and then first thing I do is I start forging towards my heel. First thing I do is I forge the heel and I drop the heel all the way down to almost the final shape, which becomes this. So when you look at this one, you see like the heel has been established. I have my bolster here, but it looks like the shape is kind of awkward. It looks like doesn't look like a kitchen knife. So here the heel is forged, but bevels are still thick here. Then what I do is with this heat, I start forging the bevels here with the power hammer. I mean, you can do it by hand, but by hand it'll take quite a bit. So I start forging here the bevels. Once I do it, my steel turns into more like this shape. At this stage, I have my bolster. My bolster is clearly defined, and I have my bevels forged. It's a little bit thick, but at least it looks more like a kitchen knife. And at this stage, I do a couple heats trying to lengthen the blade, because over here, right in front of the bolster, it's actually quite thick. So you're just trying to stretch the material so you have a thin blade starting right from your bolster. And after that, you have like almost the final shape. Then I start forging my tang further, so it looks like the final shape the knife is going to take. And from this one to finish looking integral, it takes about an hour or so forging, and a lot of grinding afterwards.
All right, Mert, that was a really good demo, man. Like, I feel like anyone could start out, if they've got an idea of knives now, they could get an idea and actually be able to at least start forging them. Mm-hmm. As everybody knows, the first time you do something, you sort of make all the mistakes everyone else did. What are the things we need to look out for that you stuffed up, or you've heard of other people stuffing up?
Well, I stuffed up plenty. I had some early integral knives that had small problems. I mean, not as a problems as more like cosmetical things and things that I wasn't aware of at that stage when I was forging.
Right.
So obviously, first thing you have to have is right size material to start with. So if you don't have a power hammer, many don't have, so you can also use 1084 that's been sold. It's probably 25 millimeter thick and probably 38 millimeter tall or 35 millimeter tall. You need to start with the right size.
Yeah.
My first mistakes were I started with the stock that was slightly thinner than it's supposed to be, because by the time you do your bolster, it needs to be really thick at the bolster. And my first integrals, I tried to finish the bolster as close to the shape, but by the time you start grinding, you start sculpting your handle around, your bolster becomes almost nothing.
Yeah, you lose all the meat out of it.
You lose all the meat of it. So when I do my integrals, actually by the time I finished my forging, my bolster is about 2.5 centimeters thick at least. So it's quite thick and beefy. But if you have material there, you can always grind it off. Versus if your bolster is almost at the final dimension, by the time you flatten it to be able to cut your shoulders, then you do your handle, your integral bolster becomes nothing. Like you have barely enough material to call it integral per se.
Yeah, right. You may as well grind it off and put a bolster on.
It's actually quite hard that way.
Yeah, right.
It is. Like you might as well just shorten it.
Yeah, right.
You've done it.
Just can it.
I've done it.
Yeah, right.
Happens.
So what else are we looking out for?
So first thing is, as I said, start with the thick material, that's enough. And second thing is, you need to stretch the heel of the knife almost below the bolster. So if you go, let's say parallel with your bolster, by the time you start your hand sanding, your heel gets rounded, okay? Then you have to come back here to fix it. And then what happens is there's such a big neck between your bolster and the heel of the knife. So what you need to do is you need to forge your heel downwards and also kind of backwards, so it comes all the way down here. So by the time you're done with all the hand sanding and you're trying to cut this area so it's crisp, you have enough material so your blade starts right after your bolster.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So are you saying you grind the back of that heel off after you've hand sanded?
Yes, because what happens is a lot of the kitchen knives you see, you do a beautiful hand sanding, all of a sudden you notice your knife doesn't have a tip anymore because it's been washed off, and same thing with the heel of the knife. So what I do is anytime I make kitchen knives, I make the tip I profile it, the tip 2 millimeters higher than what I want.
Right.
So by the time I'm done with the hand sanding, because the tip is gone, it's ground off, then I come from the tip, I put the nose down, and same thing with the heel. So I try to make the heel a little bit backwards than I need it.
Yeah,
by the time it's done, then I come back and 1 or 2 millimeters, not a whole lot.
No, it makes sense, and we all do that unintentionally, except the knife gets smaller.
Yes.
Whereas you're allowing for that so that you end up with your final desired shape.
Exactly.
Yeah, perfect.
So you want to have it a couple millimeters, well, with the integrals, a lot more than maybe a half centimeter. With the hidden tang, maybe you can play because you're still going to cut your shoulders. You still have material that you can play with, but with the integral, make sure you're trying to come as further as you can.
Yeah, that makes total sense. All right, what else are we looking for?
What else you looking for?
How do we get the shoulders even? Is that just a case of practice, or is there any sort of trick to getting them exactly the same on the bolster itself?
So
because you're not sticking them on afterwards, they're already there.
No. So you have to do equal forging. So once let's say you're forging on the right side with my power hammer, I do my forging and I also flip it, making sure they have a same thickness here. So you don't want to be having too much meat on one side and not much meat on the other side. It comes down to stop, look what you're doing.
Right.
Just don't go just bang, 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 power hammer. No. Stop, look what you're doing. See how much material you have on the left side or right side and flip it on the other side. Another mistake that I've done, and I fixed it, but it's not the best way to do is the alignment of your tang with your blade. So many times when it comes to the last slide that I was showing, that you have the tang and you drew the tang, it's the final shape, then you notice, you look at all of a sudden, your tang is on the left side, not even parallel. Your tang sometimes is on the one side of the blade.
Yeah, right.
Then you have to go back, then you have to fix it. But because now your blade is too thin to begin with, everything goes wonky.
Right.
Because everything is thin. So just don't rush, check what you're doing. That's the best advice I can give.
What do they say? Slowly, slowly, catchy monkey?
Something.
Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah, just
Yeah, right.
it's not about like just putting under the power hammer and bang, bang, bang. It's about when you get the 60-70% of the job done, bulk job done, it comes down to like minor taps. Minor taps, so you keep everything in line, making sure the spine and the edges aligned, and you have enough meat on here, you have enough meat in there. Another thing that I didn't notice till I made my mistake was I shaped my bolsters with the way I thought my handle was going to be, but then you realize your file guide, okay, doesn't sit properly because it has to be.
It's not square-sided anymore.
It's not square-sided. You're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Then by the time you square it, you got no bolster left.
Yeah, of course.
So that's why I was talking about keeping your bolsters quite chunky. So you need to keep it square so you can cut your shoulder here, so you can get your handle material nicely flush. But to be able to, you need to have a thick bolster that you can grind it flat. After that, you're still going to have enough material to be able to grind your handle afterwards.
It's a bit of genius there, because I think I'd have done that. I would have started sort of sculpting it and making it the shape, and then I'd have been stuffed because you can't get a square edge on it. Yeah, well, there you go. That's a good one.
I got some integral knives in the pile that never seen the sunlight.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
For that reason.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Awesome. All right. Well, have you got anything else on the integrals, or is that going to get us started?
That's going to get us started.
Okay, awesome.
That's going to get us started. And cleaning this area is actually quite tricky. And I'm sure you'll enjoy that when you get in integrals.
All right. So a couple of last things, Mert. If someone wanted to get a knife off you, how do they find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Tansu Knives on Instagram, and also Facebook, Tansu Knives. And I have my website, tanzuknives.com, and I try to make extra knives once a month, and I send an email blast and let people know I have available knives, and first come, serve first.
So that's a non-ordered knife?
Yeah, that's not.
Cool.
I haven't been taking customs because the custom list got to a year, and I don't want to take any further. And year is plenty enough. So
okay, so that's what I was going to ask next. If someone did order a knife, how long are they waiting? You're not doing it now.
I really don't want to do custom orders because not that I enjoy making them, but the list got to a year, and I don't want to tell people you're going to be waiting 1 year and a month, 1 year, 2 months. So if once it comes to a more manageable timeline, and I'll be opening the list.
Right.
Hopefully.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
much appreciated.
It's a pleasure.
Well, that was an awesome introduction to integral knife making by Mert Tansu. Thanks very much, Mert. Some of you guys may have seen that I've started doing a segment on my channel called Bonza Blade Tips. Now, a Bonza Blade Tip is just a quick tip from heaps of different knife makers with something they do that's something that streamlines their work, just makes it a little bit easier, a little tip that they've learned from somewhere else or come up with on their own. I reckon heaps of people are going to want to see it if you're using it, and probably will really thank you for it. Now, when you do a Bonza Blade tip, all you have to do is stick your phone in horizontal landscape mode, stick it in selfie, and then start like this. G'day, I'm Toby from Toby Fire and Steel, and this is my Bonza Blade tip. And then you just go from there. Let us know what you think. Now, if you do a little bit of footage of the thing you're doing too, that would be awesome, and I can stitch it together. It doesn't have to have that. It can just be verbal, but the more the better. Thanks very much for your contribution. Email it to me at toby@tobyfireandsteel.com. Hooroo!